This is called Lord of the Garden that I wrote. It's on Amazon. You can download an ebook or, yeah, hopefully I'll have a paperback version soon. This is the first story in Lord of the Garden. These are biblical stories with a humorous touch. Hope you appreciate it. Lord of the Garden. Adam's alarm clock went off and he turned over in his sleep, mumbling something about a rabbit and a hippo. He'd had a late night naming the animals and was trying to catch up on sleep. So he turned on his bed as a door on its hinges when he realized with a start that one of his ribs was conspicuously absent, that someone was conspicuously present, a being like himself, but distinctly lacking in body hair and bulging muscles. He touched her gently, and she awoke with a start, her eyes turning directly on him. Adam looked into the face of another human being for the first time, and their eyes fixed on each other. He moved his face closer to hers, noticing her exquisite features and her hair blowing lightly in the warm breeze. The following words are recorded as the first romantic poetry ever spoken by a man to a woman. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. So Adam and his wife fell deep in love with each other and were inseparable where they went. The animals who had previously had all of Adam's attention were perhaps a bit jealous, but understood full well since all of them had their own mates. Back then, animals understood more than they do now, though they still cannot be said to understand the way people do. Adam and Eve, as she was later named, for the sake of clarity, we will refer to her as Eve in this account, moved into Adam's place, which happened to be the lush tropical Garden of Eden. The trees were a roof over their heads, the animals their pets, the fruit on the trees their fridge. They had peace with each other and all the animals and God. They were tree huggers, animal lovers, and vegetarians. They had killer green curry and tofu stir fry and coconut sauce. They also had delectable black bean sauce as well as mango chutney. The fruit and vegetables were the original superfoods, high in protein and better tasting than tenderloin filet. Adam spent his workdays farming, a job which gave him energy. The harder he worked, the more energy he had to work more. Eve helped out with the farming and also took care of the trees and tended the flowers. Life was perfect. In all they did, God was right there with them, helping and encouraging them. They enjoyed God's presence, and he enjoyed watching them discover his creation. There's only one prohibition, which Adam had been quick to point out to Eve. You must not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, for when you eat of it, you will surely die. They had never questioned it. It was simply a given. In fact, they got into the habit of avoiding entirely and eventually did not even go near it. Over time, their personal aversion to going near or touching the tree was mixed in their minds with God's command, so that they actually thought God had forbidden touching the fruit as well. Anyway, there were enough delights in other parts of the garden, and there was no need to come near the tree. Then along came a snake to mess everything up. It could well have happened in this way. One day, Adam and Eve were playing catch with an apple near the river Euphrates. Eve was throwing and Adam was diving into the water to catch it. Eve threw one extra far and Adam leapt as far as humanly possible, which was much farther than we can now, but still missed and the apple sunk in the water. Adam dove in but lost track of underwater for some time. In the meantime, Eve had dived in and swam towards him, meaning to surprise him, but something else caught her eye in the bottom of the clear river. It was one of the pieces of the fruit from the tree of knowledge. She scooped it off the riverbed and came up on shore, suddenly very intrigued by this piece of fruit. The ancient command, a distant memory. In fact, where she'd come up was right next to the tree itself, and Adam was still playing in the water about 20 feet away. Eve did not see the harm in looking at the fruit, but as she examined it, she became lost in her concentration. Suddenly she heard a voice. "My precious," it hissed. It was not abnormal to hear animals speaking. They often did, and they could be understood by humans, though they mostly just talked about food and weather. "Oh, hello, snake," said Eve, recognizing the snake, though she'd never spoken with him before. "Is this yours, or are you not allowed to eat it either?" "It's precious to me," the snake hissed. "Precious? What do you mean precious? God told us never to eat this fruit," Eve said, somewhat puzzled. Animals did not usually express personal feelings. "Has God indeed said, 'You shall not eat of every tree of the garden'?" the snake replied. Eve said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God had said, you shall not eat it. She paused, trying to remember. The snake waited. Eve finished. Nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Yes, that's what God said. Adam from a distance saw his wife talking to a snake and didn't think much of it. Then he did a double take. She was holding the forbidden fruit in her hand and was close enough to the tree to touch it. Meanwhile, the snake allowed Eve to come to the realization that she was indeed touching the fruit, and whatever dying was, she had evidently not done it yet because nothing had happened. The snake, ever the shady, door-to-door use vacuum cleaner style salesman who convinces people they want something they don't need and can't afford, pretended to be surprised, then offered a casual observation. You haven't died yet, and you will not surely die. Then he put on an air of worldly wisdom, licking his non-existent lips effectively. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you'll be like God, knowing good and evil. Yes, you have been missing out because God is holding you back. All of us animals know your true destiny. We're all waiting for you people to realize that you can be gods. So you haven't died, even though you touched the fruit. Now, what's the harm in trying it? He spoke with an inquisitive yet challenging tone, as if to issue a dare. Adam saw Eve examining the fruit, smelling it. Eve, he called. She was out of earshot. Also, the snake was hissing loudly in her ear. Adam began to run. Eve considered the fruit. The snake seemed very wise. Was it true that only she and Adam did not know the truth? She began to doubt God. Why hadn't he told her? Perhaps he expected them to find out, to show daring, initiative, and independence by transcending the temporal commandment. The fruit, after all, was very pleasant to the eyes, clearly good for food, and could make her wise. Eve's eyes got big. My precious, she whispered. Her heart began to beat very quickly. Somewhere out of her mind, she was aware that Adam had called her in a voice of alarm, but this was far from her focus. The fruit consumed her, and then she consumed it. And I'll stop there. You can read the rest of the story in the collection Lord of the Garden and Other Stories that you can find currently on Amazon. And God bless and have a great day.